Now, the SNP, the Scottish National Party, is threatening to, if you pardon the pun, derail the High Speed 2 project. The deputy leader of the SNP has said that if Labour wins the election and they form some kind of alliance with the SNP, one of the conditions might be that the High Speed 2 rail link, currently planned from Birmingham to London, would instead have to start in Scotland. So is the West Midlands being held hostage by the SNP? We'll speak in a moment to Jim Steer, who's the director of Greengage 21, a rail research group. First, Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp, who's the chief executive of Business for Scotland. Gordon, good morning to you.
Good morning.
It wouldn't make sense, would it, to have a High Speed 2 linking Scotland to the West Midlands, would it?
Absolutely. It would. If it's going to make sense anywhere, it makes sense to not just link Scotland, but Newcastle and all the way down. I think that if the project of such massive expense actually only achieves an unblocking of the arteries towards London, then all that will do is increase the flow of economic lifeblood to London and away from the north, the northeast, the Midlands and Scotland. The problem with this whole project is that it's not really been costed properly. The costs are going through the roof. But one of the things that is supposed to generate £15 billion worth of benefit to the economy of the UK per year, but the same report says, but it will cost Aberdeen's economy $220 million a year, and Dundee's economy $96 million a year, every year ongoing, because of the change to the transport infrastructure. Now, that gives us a problem. It's going to cost jobs in Scotland, and if we have to pay a population percentage share of the cost, then surely we shouldn't lose out. Yeah,
I'm just thinking, though, Gordon, if I want to travel to Glasgow or Edinburgh from the West Midlands, I can do that any day of the week on a train, very well served by trains, both Glasgow and Edinburgh. If I want to go to Aberdeen, there are flights from Birmingham Airport, as well as being able to use rail options. The pinch points, though, on our transport network, whether we like it or not, are between here in the West Midlands and London and the southeast of England. That's where we have the most congestion. That's where we have the mass of the population of these islands.
The reason for that is that government after government for generations has been following a strategy of putting all of the economic bags of the United Kingdom into one basket. We've been having a massive increase in the population of London and the southeast in particular, and we've seen economic opportunity and population and power pulled away from the rest of the United Kingdom. Now, I was brought up in Hexham, Northumberland, and I can tell you now there's another region of the United Kingdom that needs devolution. It needs a bespoke set of economic policies for its own growth, and I think we need to actually say the days of centralised London control over economic policy, a one-size-fits-all, when quite clearly London's economy is differing so vastly now from the rest of the United Kingdom. I think that has to come to an end on May the 7th, and we need to start looking at how we can actually share prosperity around these isles. And one of the ways to do that is to have an integrated transport network throughout the whole of the UK. Now, I personally don't think that HS2 has been well thought out. I think the way that it's actually been justified economically is by updating a 2003 traveller survey to talk about whether people would be more productive if they were at their office an hour earlier. But the survey was done, that they've updated, was done before 4G, it was done before Wi-Fi on trains. I think the whole project needs a relook, but I do understand the SNP's policy of saying, well, actually, let's start from Scotland if we were going to have to pay for it.
Yeah, although would you really spend upward of 50 billion quid on a project linking Scotland and the West Midlands? Would that make sense? Let's speak to Jim Steer then from Greengage 21. Jim, would it?
Well, good morning, Adrian. Well, I checked the SNP manifesto given this comment yesterday, and that's very, very clear. They're not talking about an either-or. They're not saying, oh, don't bother with Birmingham, London, let's just get on building from Scotland. They're saying, alongside the development of high-speed rail from London to the Midlands, we should be looking at developing from Scotland southwards. And I think this goes to Gordon's point about an integrated system. The Scottish perspective is we want to link Glasgow, Edinburgh, and no doubt Aberdeen as well, which does have weak rail links, to London and to Birmingham, to the cities of the north of England. They want a journey time of 3 hours from Glasgow, Edinburgh to London. So you've got to start thinking north-south as well as the Birmingham-London section.
Jim, I hear what you say, but, there is only so much money in the pot, and a declining pot given the austerity times that we live in. And although, of course, it would be great to have a fully joined integrated transport network across the UK, and, it'd be nice if we had regular trains in the West Midlands between Walsall and Wolverhampton, for example, or places like Moseley and Kingsheath in Birmingham had a train service. But if the government centrally in the Westminster has only got a certain amount of money, come on, it doesn't make sense first to join up Scotland with the West Midlands, does it?
Well, I agree to do so first, but they haven't actually said that. What they've said is we need to think about these things alongside one another, and just as within the West Midlands, there are very congested rail corridors, which is partly what HS2 is addressing, as well as all the route down to London. The routes into Glasgow and Edinburgh, for instance, and it's no good getting somewhere near those cities. You want to be in, just like in Birmingham, you want to be in the middle of those cities when you get off your train. Those corridors are congested too. So I'm afraid you do have to look around the whole piece. What's possibly missing here, and I think it goes to the point Gordon made earlier, is an overall programme. Sure, then you've got to prioritise carefully, but I'd have thought some investment in Scotland to help facilitate HS2 is probably the right way to go.
Good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Jim Steer from Greengage 21 and Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp, the Chief Executive of Business for Scotland. Some very interesting thoughts.